Good morning. What we're analyzing today is the China Strategic Model, Lessons in AI and Governance. We aren't here just to analyze a competitor. We're here to decode an alternative model for innovation and social engineering. For you, as business leaders, understanding this playbook means gaining a critical perspective to navigate complexity and, most importantly, build a coherent strategy for adopting complex technologies like AI. Let's get straight to the point. What's changing? China is no longer competing on cost. It's competing on strategic coherence. Its industrial policy, its cultural push, and its data governance are all aligned to create a self-sufficient tech ecosystem. Why is this urgent now? Two reasons. The acceleration of embodied AI, think EVs, robotics, the grid, and the EU's AI Act compliance deadlines. Those deadlines force you to make immediate strategic choices about your data. So, what do you do in the next 6 months? 3 things. 1. Map your supply chain exposure to Chinese high-tech. 2. Start your AI Act compliance audit. Key obligations have been active since this past August. 3. Evaluate the ROI of internal AI pilots to defend your margins from this new wave of competition. To understand China's strategic decisions, we have to start with its philosophical software, its cultural source code, Confucian ethics. This is a radically different OS than ours. Where Western tradition emphasizes the individual and autonomy, Confucian thought defines identity through social roles and relationships. You don't exist as an abstract individual. You become a person within a family, a company, and a community. The ethical goal isn't self-actualization, it's social harmony. This translates into core virtues that regulate interaction. Ren, benevolence, Yi, righteousness, or the moral duty to act for the greater good. Li, the social norms that maintain order. Xi, wisdom, as moral discernment, and Xin, integrity and trustworthiness. The core of the system is the family, seen as a microcosm of the state. The respect for elders, filial piety, is scaled up to society. The relationship between ruler and subject is modeled on father and son. Why am I talking about philosophy? Because as business leaders, ignoring this cultural matrix means failing to understand what motivates your Chinese employees, partners, or consumers. This worldview generates an idea of success that is inherently collective. Individual triumph is inseparable from the group's well-being. If Confucian ethics is the software, cultural engineering is the deployment method. The fact that Chinese cinema celebrates the triumph of the community over the individual is not an accident. It's a social policy designed to align individual ambition with national goals. There's a specific genre called main melody films, designed to build consensus. In these movies, the hero doesn't win because he's a lone genius. He wins because of community support and duty to the nation. The success being sold isn't the Western version of individual luck and guile. It's a triumph achieved through hard work and dedication to the common good. There is a direct functional link between this cultural engineering and China's economic model, which is built on massive, long-term, state-directed investment. To execute multi-decade plans, you need a population that believes in collective effort. The lesson for us for change management in your companies is profound. An AI transformation strategy almost never fails on the technology. It fails on the culture. It's not enough to list the benefits. You have to narrate a collective hero's journey where the company's success and the employee's success are one and the same. Narrative becomes a strategic tool. This brings us to governance and control. The image many visitors have of Chinese cities is one of clean, safe, and orderly environments. This orderly society is an engineered product resting on 2 pillars, managed welfare and pervasive social control. On one hand, the state invests in public services. On the other, the hukou system, household registration, ties social rights to your place of birth, effectively locking migrant workers out of full urban services. And then there's the surveillance infrastructure, like the Golden Shield project, which aims to create a centralized database linking all surveillance systems. This infrastructure feeds the controversial social credit system. We have to separate myth from reality. The myth is a single national score for every citizen. The reality is a patchwork of lists and admin registries with a heavy focus on corporate compliance. But the effect is a digital panopticon. The constant perception of being watched encourages self-censorship and conformity. For a business, welfare and control aren't separate. They are a single governance system. It's no surprise that in Transparency International's 2024 index, China ranks 76th out of 180. The user interface for this model is a paradise of digital convenience. This seamless experience is powered by an ecosystem dominated by super apps like Tencent's WeChat and Ant Group's Alipay. The numbers are staggering. 2024 estimates show Alipay with about 54% and WeChat Pay with 42% of the mobile payment market. They are the market. And these aren't just apps, they are integrated ecosystems. Look at WeChat. It is the de facto operating system of Chinese society. It started as messaging, but now handles bill payments, doctor's appointments, taxes, e-commerce, and entertainment. Cash is marginal. Their power is so total that any company, including foreign ones, must integrate these payment methods to access the Chinese market. Meanwhile, Beijing is expanding its digital yuan eCNY pilots to Hong Kong. This is the great digital social contract, convenience in exchange for data. The state strategically allowed this private duopoly to build the core infrastructure of daily life because it offers unmatched convenience. In return, the state gets a centralized, real-time ledger of nearly every social and economic transaction. This data stream is an invaluable asset for economic planning and for feeding the social credit system. This brings up a strategic question for your companies. Are we using this technology to create genuine customer value or just for data extraction? In Europe, the guardrails are already in place. As of February of this year, social scoring systems are banned in the EU. And as of this past August, the new obligations for general-purpose AI models are already active. A key difference from Western cycles is long-term centralized planning. The Chinese system can be described as centralized directive, decentralized execution. The central government sets the strategic vision through 5-year plans. The local governments then have broad autonomy and are incentivized, often with career promotions, to execute those directives rapidly, turning cities like Shenzhen into innovation hubs. The most emblematic case study is electric vehicles, EVs. This push didn't start last year. It started in 2009 with the first subsidies. In 2015, the Made in China plan identified EVs as a strategic priority. In 2021, the 14th 5-year plan accelerated EV grid integration. And now, in 2025, we're seeing the launch of 30 large-scale vehicle-to-grid V2G pilot projects in 9 cities. The strategy is so advanced it aims to turn millions of EVs into mobile batteries to stabilize the national power grid.
This model, however, is not without significant risk. The autonomy granted to local officials, combined with pressure to get results at all costs, creates fertile ground for corruption. That Transparency International score, 76th out of 180, with a score of 43 out of 100, helps you calibrate your due diligence on vendors and local
partnerships. The corruption and the rapid execution aren't separate phenomena, they are causally linked. The lesson for us as leaders: define a long-term vision that survives quarterly results and establish clear governance to ensure decentralized execution doesn't become rogue. China's current tech explosion isn't a spontaneous market bloom, it's a national mobilization campaign. The goal is geopolitical, technological sovereignty. The capital is enormous. We're talking over 3.6 trillion renminbi, or RMB. That's the official currency, invested in R&D in 2024 alone, an 8.3% annual increase. That's about 2.68% of China's GDP. Plans like AI Initiative Plus are estimated at $220 billion. And cities are competing. Shenzhen launched a 10 billion yuan fund for AI and robotics, with subsidies that can cover up to 60% of a company's training costs. The operating model is similar to the US's DARPA. The state acts as the first and primary customer. By buying technology at key development milestones, it dramatically reduces the risk for startups. The goals are specific. For example, the plan targeted 70% of large manufacturing enterprises to be using AI by 2025. A key case study is the Hangzhou City Brain, developed by Alibaba. It's an infrastructure-level AI that, in its pilot district, led to a 15% increase in average intersection speed and saved 4.6 minutes of travel time on a major urban route. For a Western CEO, the principle of lowering the barrier to entry is universal. We can't replicate the state-led model, but we can replicate the logic. An agile approach allows your company to start its AI journey with a low-risk initial audit, validating the potential before committing heavy capital, replicating that risk reduction logic on a corporate scale. For decades, Made in China was synonymous with low-cost manufacturing. That era is over. Quality, not price, is the new weapon. This is the core of the Made in China 2025 plan. The goal, to transform China from a big manufacturer to a strong one, shifting focus from quantity to quality, moving up the value chain, and hitting 70% domestic production of key components by 2025. This shift is fueled by a massive investment in automation, with over 1 million industrial robots installed. Today, we're seeing reverse offshoring. Chinese companies themselves are now offshoring low-end production to places like Vietnam, while reserving high-value, automated production for their domestic factories. This is creating a critical side effect, a global overcapacity crisis. Just like with solar panels, there are now warnings of dangerous overproduction in robotics, with over 1,000 active firms. To absorb this, China must export aggressively. For us, this is no longer a problem of price competition. It's competition on quality and scale, fueled by a state-run industrial strategy.
If you want a single showcase of this new industrial power, look at the auto industry. Chinese manufacturers aren't just winning on price. They're winning because they have redefined the car itself. The approach is the smartphone on wheels. They prioritize in-car tech, entertainment screens, and voice assistants over pure driving performance. This is backed by massive subsidies, an estimated
$230.9 billion between 2009 and 2023, and extreme vertical integration. Giants like BYD make almost everything in-house, including their own batteries and semiconductors. The data confirms this acceleration. In 2024, China sold over 11 million electric cars, pushing the domestic EV market share to nearly 50%. This accounts for roughly two-thirds, 67%, of all global EV sales. This overcapacity is now triggering a brutal price war, a risk local analysts call involution, a competitive implosion, or a race to the bottom. This table shows the technical comparison. You don't need to read every spec, just look at the substance. The NIO EL8 is competing directly with the BMW 9 on luxury and performance. And the Xiaomi SU7 Max has acceleration, 0 to 60 in 2.78 seconds, and horsepower, 673 horsepower, that put it in direct competition with the Porsche Taycan Turbo S, but with an entirely different cost structure. The battle for the future of the car is no longer one on the track, it's one in the user interface. China is democratizing the smart EV, and it understands the next frontier is vehicle-to-grid, or V2G. This isn't an abstract concept. It's a paradigm shift that turns the car from a depreciating asset into a potential profit center. The logic is flipped. The vehicle is no longer just a consumer pulling energy from the grid. It becomes a physical-digital integration, a two-way street. Millions of cars stop being a problem for the grid and become part of the solution, a massive, distributed mobile battery. The economic model is simple. The car charges at night when power is cheap and sells power back to the grid during peak demand when power is expensive. The owner gets paid for this stabilization service. Strategically, this accelerates the ROI of owning the vehicle. And the real lesson, again, is the speed of execution. China has already launched 30 large-scale pilot projects in 9 major cities this year. These aren't just experiments, they are the implementation of a new economic model. This is embodied AI connecting mobility, energy, and software. In parallel with this industrial transformation is a cultural one. The dominance of Western luxury and consumer brands is fading. The driver is a powerful nationalist trend known as guoqiao, or China chic. It's fueled by intense national pride, especially among Gen Z, who see patriotic consumption, choosing a domestic brand as an act of national support. This works because the quality of Chinese products has improved dramatically and because they are tailored specifically to local cultural tastes. The results are tangible. The share of Chinese brands in online searches on Baidu has jumped from 45% to 75% in 5 years. Sales for a brand like Porsche in China fell 35% last year. And even as the overall luxury market is projected to grow to $65.11 billion in 2L25, domestic brands are capturing more of that spend, even in high-end beauty. Do you see the strategic synergy? The Made in China 2025 plan produces higher quality domestic goods. This high quality fuels the guoqiao trend. In turn, guoqiao creates a protected, enthusiastic domestic market for those goods. The lesson for us is blunt. The prestige of a Western brand is no longer enough. You have to compete on quality, innovation, and local authenticity. This analysis can't stop at China's borders. Facing tensions with the West, China is executing a clear pivot to the South. Its focus is now on the global South, the Middle East, Africa, and South America. The Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, is the tool. In the first half of 2025, BRI engagements hit a new record, $123.3 billion. Africa leads the pack at around $39 billion. A key example is Iraq, which became a top recipient in 2021, receiving nearly $9 billion for infrastructure, power plants, and even building 1,000 schools. This table summarizes the BRI investment strategy. In Africa, the focus is energy and minerals. In the Middle East, energy and infrastructure. In Latin America, China is building production plants, like BYD's factory in Brazil, to access strategic resources like lithium while simultaneously bypassing Western tariffs. This pivot has 3 strategic goals. 1. Secure supply chains for critical resources. 2. Create new export markets to absorb its industrial overcapacity. 3. Build diplomatic influence to counter the US. The implication for your business is that global supply chains are bifurcating. Relying on a single supplier or market is now a massive strategic risk. These cultural differences also show up in the approach to competition embodied by Sun Tzu. Western tradition has often glorified the decisive battle. The Confucian tradition, by contrast, detests violence and places scholars above warriors. This is the philosophy of Sun Tzu. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. How? Not with brute force, but with intellect, strategy, deception, and diplomacy, all aimed at undermining the opponent's will to resist. Chinese philosophy divides politics into 1. Civil, cultural administration, which is considered superior, and Wu, the use of military force, which is seen as a necessary evil and a failure of diplomacy. This isn't pacifism, it's a radically different strategic approach. It extends to geopolitics through the concept of Tianxia, or all under heaven, the traditional vision of a Sinocentric world order. In Tianxia, influence isn't spread by conquest, but by cultural attraction and a system of hierarchical relationships. Today, this is reincarnated as the modern 3 warfares: psychological warfare, influencing perception, media warfare, controlling the narrative, and legal warfare, using international law as a geopolitical tool. The business lesson: competition isn't just won in a head-to-head price war. It's won by strategically making your competitor irrelevant through superior innovation or a more efficient ecosystem. Despite this planning, the Chinese model has a systemic vulnerability: the real estate crisis. This isn't a simple downturn, it's a direct threat to household wealth and consumer confidence. The numbers are staggering. The peak of property sales in 2021 was 18.2 trillion renminbi, RMB. The 2024 estimate is 8.5 trillion, a crash of over 50%. This is devastating in a country where an estimated 65% of middle-class wealth is tied to real estate. How did this happen? For decades, local governments funded themselves by selling land to developers. This fueled a construction boom disconnected from real demand, creating the infamous ghost cities and a mountain of debt. The price collapse from 18.19 trillion renminbi in 2021 to an estimated 8.5 to 9.0 trillion for 2024 has decimated family balance sheets. Sales forecasts don't show a stabilization until 2026 or 2027 at the earliest. Beijing's response has been remarkably cautious, no massive bailouts. The leadership seems to be accepting a smaller but healthier sector long-term. Paradoxically, this crisis is acting as an involuntary catalyst for the very economic rebalancing Beijing has wanted for years. Capital is no longer flowing into what I call unproductive concrete. It's being redirected by both market forces and state guidance into the high-tech sectors of Made in China 2025. The lesson for us is powerful. Clinging to obsolete business models drains the resources you need to invest in the future. Innovation without a measurable ROI is just an academic exercise. The question I always ask my clients isn't, what can this technology do? It's, what profitable business problem can this solve? The deepest difference between China and the West isn't what they build, but why and how. We are witnessing the emergence of fundamentally different tech paradigms. The Chinese paradigm, a top-down, state-guided AI ecosystem aimed at national sovereignty, economic efficiency, and social engineering. The American paradigm, fragmented, market-driven, private sector-led ecosystems focused on global commercial dominance. The European paradigm, defined by rights-based regulation, using the AI Act as a tool of global normative competition. This table summarizes the three playbooks. Strategic goal: sovereignty versus market dominance versus global standards. The philosophy on data is the perfect example. In China, it's a strategic national asset. In the US, it's a corporate asset. In Europe, it's a fundamental right, protected by GDPR. Each model has strengths and weaknesses. China's strength: scale, speed of implementation, and national coherence. Its vulnerability: the rigidity of state control, which can stifle innovation. The US's strength: dynamism, market agility, and a world-leading startup ecosystem. Its vulnerability: strategic fragmentation. The EU's strength: regulatory power, the Brussels effect, and a focus on trust. Its vulnerability: lagging in tech development and the risk of overregulation. For us in Europe, this AI Act timeline is critical. This isn't theory, it's operational reality. As of February of this year, the bans on things like social scoring are in effect. As of this past August, the obligations for general-purpose AI, GPI, models are active, and full enforcement for high-risk systems is coming between August 2026 and 2027. For European companies, the time to act is now. AI runs on data, but the three models treat this fuel differently. China benefits from massive, centralized data pools, or data liquidity. The lack of a firewall between corporate and state data turns it into a national strategic asset. Europe, by contrast, has protection and constraints. GDPR and the AI Act create compliance friction, but also spur innovation in data-saving tech like synthetic data. In the US, data is a corporate asset, creating a three-way tug-of-war between the state, the corporations, and the individual. The innovation engines are also different. China uses military-civil fusion and CF. This is an approach that eliminates the barriers between sectors. The state acts as the first and best customer, taking the risk out of R&D for these companies. They know they have a guaranteed buyer. It functions as a state-managed accelerator. The West, by contrast, is dominated by venture capital, VC. This system is exceptionally good at creating disruptive software, but it optimizes for speed and financial returns, not for strategic coherence. It creates a portfolio of point solutions, not an integrated national system. You can see these differences in the final products. China excels at embodied AI, intelligence built into physical hardware, advanced robotics, drones, autonomous vehicles, and the Made in China 2025 industrial automation. The emblematic application is the smart city, like Hangzhou's City Brain, which optimizes traffic in real time. China is using AI to build a physical, social operating system, including those 30 large-scale V2G projects. The West, particularly the US, excels at software-centric AI, the generative AI and LLM explosion. The applications focus on augmenting individual or enterprise productivity and creativity, chatbots, coding assistants, report summarization, and content generation. The West is building a universal toolkit for the digital economy. This brings us to the conclusion. The fundamental lesson from the Chinese paradigm is not about imitation, it's about strategic coherence. The Chinese system isn't necessarily better or worse than the fragmented, market-driven, rights-constrained Western model. It is, however, remarkably coherent. The culture, Guoqiao, reinforces the industrial policy, Mike 25. The industrial policy creates the overcapacity that requires the foreign policy, BRI. The foreign policy secures the resources that fuel the industry. And the entire system is enabled by a digital infrastructure that doubles as a governance tool and a data pool for AI. Western companies cannot, and should not, replicate this top-down model. Our advantage lies in agility and bottom-up, VC-driven innovation. It also lies in an ethical framework that, while creating regulatory friction like the AI Act, builds long-term trust. The contrast is clear. We are incredibly fast at software-based AI, the toolkit, but slow at long-term industrial strategy, the embodied AI. While China launches 30 large-scale V2G pilots, we're still debating the charging standards. The challenge for a CEO today is to build your own strategic coherence. I'll leave you with 3 strategic questions for your business. 1. Culture. Is our company culture ready for the transparency and change that AI demands? Have we built that collective hero's journey? 2. Data governance. Are we just compliant with the law, or are we compliant with the ethics our customers expect? Are we creating value or just extracting data? 3. KPIs and ROI. Are we investing in digital concrete AI projects with no clear ROI instead of focusing on applications that deliver a tangible competitive advantage? The true lesson from the Chinese paradigm is this: success in the 21st century belongs to those who align culture, technology, governance, and strategy into a single, coherent plan of action. This means we must stop treating AI as an isolated tech experiment and start seeing it as the connective tissue of our entire business strategy. The Chinese real estate crisis teaches us that investing billions in unproductive assets is a systemic threat. Navigating the AI Act and turning compliance into a competitive advantage is the immediate challenge. If you need guidance in transforming this obligation into a strategic asset, we can analyze your specific situation. To explore these topics further, I invite you to visit my blog at andrewviliati.it. For those interested in a personalized discussion and audit, we can schedule a meeting through the Rhythm Blues AI pathway. Thank you.